Choosing yarn is one of the most fun parts of punch needle, but it can also be really intimidating if you don't know what to look for. So when I think about what yarn to choose, there's a couple of things I want to keep in mind. Number one, what is my project going to end up being? Is it going to be something that hangs on the wall? Is it going to be a high traffic project like a pillow or a rug? Is it going to be something that gets interacted with a lot? This is important to think about because if you choose a non-durable yarn for a project that's really going to see a lot of interaction, then it may not hold up as well as you would like it to. The other thing to consider is the yarn you choose going to flow nicely through your needle? Because if it doesn't, it won't work for punch needle. So that's the first thing that I think about is what am I using it for and can it flow through my needle? So now I want to go take a closer look at some of the yarns that I've used for different projects and which needle you would use them with. So I've got a variety here of yarns. I've got some woolies, acrylic. This is a great yarn to use with a regular Oxford needle. It's also comes in quite a few colors and it's very cheap. I've also got some rug wool, which is yarn specifically milled for punch needle and to be used in high traffic projects. This is also rug wool, but it's fine. And then this is a basic craft store acrylic. It's worsted, it's a little finer than that Thick and Quick. But there's also things like finger weight yarn, wool strips, raffia, cut fabric strips, all kinds of different options of things that you could use with your punch needle. So here is my rule of thumb when selecting a yarn for my needle. I like to look at, is the yarn comparable in width to the needle I want to use? So here's a little sample of rug wool. And when I hold that up to the needle shaft, you can see those are about the same width. This is so important because it means that this needle is not going to create a hole that in the fabric that's too large for this yarn to stay in. If it's going to make a hole that's way bigger than the yarn, then the yarn is just going to fall out. So we want these to be comparable in size. When I look at my fine needle, you can see that the wool is way bigger, way thicker than that needle. So that's going to prevent it from flowing through the needle. So instead, I would opt for something like a fine rug wool or this worsted basic cotton. And then if I wanted to use something like this finger weight yarn here, I would actually change the needle I'm using completely. And this is where I would go for my Ultra Punch or my Laver needle, something that is a lot thinner. So if you are unsure, you can just test it. Take that yarn, run it through the needle, and see if it's able to flow. Remember the phrase, if it flows, it goes. Now there are instances where it will flow through the needle, but then when you go to punch with it, it doesn't work as well. That's why super important to just test out whatever it is you're thinking before you commit to buying a huge amount of it. So here is an example of, I'll just use this one, it's already open. Here's my rug wool, and I'm gonna show you what it would be like trying to thread this through a fine needle. So this thick rug wool I would normally use with my regular Oxford, but let's say I want to try and thread it through the fine needle. First of all, you can see it's not even moving through that eye. It's too thick, okay? So that's a pretty good indicator that that is not going to fit my needle if you're really having a hard time. Okay, got it threaded. When I pull this, it is a lot of resistance to get that yarn through the needle. So that's going to be way too thick. I would want to use something a lot finer. So here is the same needle with a yarn that is good for it. And now I'm going to pull that through. And you can see, pulls way easier. If it flows, it goes. For the most part, nowadays I mostly use rug wool, and there are several different vendors I love using. They are Storyteller wool, Seal Harbor wool, Halcyon yarns, Wackadoo yarns if you want to use thinner rug wool. These are all hand-dyed yarn companies that create really beautiful colors that I couldn't find in a store. Another benefit to using rug wool, albeit a little more expensive than regular yarn, is the durability. So a couple years ago, I made some punch needle slippers. You maybe have seen them on Instagram. They were blue and white, super cute. Made them, wore them. After a few months, I noticed that they were pilling and getting so fuzzy on the top. The friction of wearing them hitting each other, hitting something else while I was walking, was just tearing up the front of the shoe. And that's because I punched it with acrylic. I used a wool blend, but it wasn't 100% wool. If you are using or making a project that is high traffic, think about how's it going to look in a few months if it's just been rubbed constantly. It's one great reason to invest in rug wool because it's not going to do that. And even if it does, you can take like a little sweater shaver and shave off the pills. It's durable. It's made to be used on high traffic projects. Now, if I was going to make a wall hanging, something that's not going to come in contact with a lot of things, acrylic all day because it's cheaper. I don't have to worry about it pilling and getting a lot of wear and tear. So even though rug wool is expensive, it definitely has its purpose and it is worth the investment depending on how you're going to use it. So again, remember with yarn, if it flows, it goes, and then think about what's the final application of your project because that may determine what you end up using.